Hello, welcome everyone to our guest lecture, again with our favorite guest speaker,
I like
Patricia Elbaz. She's been here before, not with you necessarily, but with the university. She's a very good friend and a distinguished speaker, even though this is not the distinguished speaker series, but the investment and wealth management lecture series, which I've been doing for many years, as you know. Patricia is a good friend. She's an investment professional. She's a trader herself. She's a technical analyst. She should talk about technical analysis in particular, but the FX outlook for 2025. She's also a lecturer at the French University down the road and with the LSE and LBS and so on. And she has a lot of experience, and she's going to talk about like 20-30 minutes. Then you can ask questions. Over to Patricia, please.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Jacob. So it's great to be back here, and it's also great to see Jacob. I think what you've got to do is make the most of Jacob's knowledge, because he's got very, very strong knowledge, and he also brings in speakers. So I said in work, make the most of that. Networking is number one, especially at the moment with jobs and internships. So whenever you have a speaker and you know they're involved in something, make the most of it. So my background is, as Jacob said, in technical analysis. I used to work in foreign exchange for Standard & Poor's, and I was in charge of writing commentaries which would go out on Reuters, Bloomberg, and different vendors, and we would say these are the levels to watch. So people would trade accordingly, and at the time the big currencies were of course dollar Deutschmark and sterling dollar still. So really, really interesting to see how the market works. So in this presentation, I also want to have interaction, because I think it's more fun when there's interaction. So when I ask, for example, what's the first thing that you talk about? When you look at the news now, what would you say is the thing which we talk a lot about in finance? What would you say? Chiara, what would you say?
Right at the moment?
Yes.
It can be anything.
Yes, could be anything that you notice, that you look at the paper and you think, oh, that's interesting.
Well, I think I'm reading a lot regarding Bitcoin.
Cryptos.
Yeah, cryptos.
Yes, exactly. So that's one of the big things that you see. And one of the things that we see is that, you know, we see, why has it gone up so much?
Mm.
Wow, you know, there's that whole thing. And when it was 20,000, we didn't think so much of it.
Yes.
People were talking about 100,000 and we thought, oh, they're crazy. What are they talking about? And it came close to that level. So that's one of the big things we're talking about. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons as well. And we're going to look at some of the charts. Okay, so that's one of the things. What are the things would you say? When you look at the news, what are the things would you say? Over here?
AI.
Yes, AI, definitely. What's your name?
Ronak.
Sorry?
Ronak.
As Ronak said, AI is definitely one of the big things. Which company do we always talk about? We talk about AI. NVIDIA, that's it. Who's bought NVIDIA, by the way? Oh, there's a clever one down there. Okay, I'm following your next stock. Okay, you're going to tell me. So, AI, and it's one of the ones that, of course, is involved. And we spoke about the M7, the Magnificent 7. So this is the 7 big tech companies which are driving the S&P. So if I look at this chart, which I just had a look at just recently, and if you see what's happened here, you see the M7 up 43%, and then you see underneath S&P 500, which tracks all of the other ones, up just 27%. So it has taken a huge share. And if we look at it, just to see out of the M7, which ones are leading the move, as you mentioned just now, NVIDIA is right at the top there. So we've got NVIDIA there, 198%. So this is just looking at over the past year, which is incredible, something that we really don't see on a regular basis. And then you've got the other ones which are cropping up. Interestingly, Tesla was quite low over there, and it's managed to crop up and come up on under 3 here. So this has been one of the big stories, as we say, and the big thing as well, I remember this time last year, I was at a conference in Paris, and people were saying, is it overvalued because it's gone up so much? What do you think? And we were all saying, it's a trend. So in a way, you go with the trend. But there is always at the back of your mind the question, is it overdone? So a lot of the times with the stocks, which have gone down up very quickly, you do have that question, you know, is it overdone? Is there going to be a correction? So far, the big thing is that it is driving the S&P. The M7 is still driving the S&P 500. So when we look at analysis, and let's say you go to the trading room, you've got people who have to make decisions, of course. They will look at two things. Fundamentals, so it's like what Jacob studied, or the economics and his PhD and all of that. It's all to do with the economy. So fundamentals is everything to do with the economy. So if you want to buy a share, you'd be looking at what's happened, how it's been doing, the P/E ratio, everything to do with the economy would be regarded as fundamentals. And of course, when you look at fundamentals, you would look also at the reaction of the central bankers, whether they are more hawkish, whether they are more dovish, their reaction to whether they're going to go for higher rates or lower rates. So all of this is part of fundamental analysis. On the other side, and this is something which I specialized in, is technical analysis. And really, if I have to just summarize technical analysis, I would say it's looking at price and volume, looking at what they're doing. So you look at historical data, and you also have indicators to help you to see the move. Now, I think whenever someone wants to trade or is looking at anything, I always think, how can you make a decision if you don't know where you've come from, what the price is, tracking the price? So this is why, for me, technical analysis is so important, because I need to know where we've come from, what's the past historical, what's happened, and then make a decision on what's happening now. So here, if I look at this chart of sterling dollar, most recent one here, and if I look at that, it's long term. Of course, we're going back as far as 2016 there. And if I say, what would you say is the long-term trend? If you look at that, what would you say is the long-term trend? It looks down, yeah. Long-term, as we say, you know, we've come from 150 hit just below 105, and now we're around 126, 127 around here. So it is very much long-term, we've got down. Medium-term, what would you say? What would you say in the last?
Sideways.
It's very much a range, totally sideways. It's a range because you can't see a proper, you know, rally, you can't see a proper down move. So it's very much, as you say, sideways. And very short term, we need to see hourly chart. So very short term, it looked like it was trying to tick lower recently. So if you're making a decision and you have to trade, for example, from this morning to make a decision for this evening, what chart are you interested in? So if you had to make very, very, very short-term decisions, what chart would you look at? Hourly, exactly. So you'd look at your tick chart, your hourly chart. This would not be relevant because, you know, what's happened in 2018, 2020 is not important. You want to see what's happening this morning when Asia closed and Europe is opening. So that's what's relevant for you. So as a chartist, and in order to make decision, you'll be looking specifically at charts. You'll be looking specifically at price activity. And the one thing which is really, really relevant today is what we call candle charts. So if you go into any dealing room, I'm sure you've seen them, people don't really use line chart or bar chart. They're more interested in candle chart. And one of the reasons why is because it shows you clearly, straight away when you look at that, you can see if it's red, which is bearish, or if it's green. So people like that because visually you're able to see very clearly, you know, what's happening here. You know, you can see clearly that, you know, we hit just below 135 and then the market has gone down. So it's one of the reasons why is one of the popular charts. So it's got this pop-up thing to it.
Triple top.
Yes, so, wow, triple top, my God, that means you're a massive sterling bear, which is a possibility. So what we're saying here is triple top. If that's happening, it means that we've tried so many times at 140, just above 140, it hasn't happened. So it means you've got selling pressure around these levels. At the moment, if we look at what's happening, of course you had the Trump trade, people traded, bought dollars, and a lot of them did very well. And if it carries on with, you know, the big thing with Trump is protecting US economy. So that's really one of the one of the things that he's pushing for. That could be positive for the dollar. If that carries on, we could actually have a risk of sterling falling. My thing is that I actually think we're going to have sterling trading between 120 and 130. I'm not going all the way down to 105 as some people are, so I'm not a massive sterling bear. I do think there's going to be a floor at some stage where the market is going to find some kind of level of support, and we're going to see possibly a recovery. So the general consensus is that sterling's had its day and we're going to see the dollar even stronger, but I'm less of a bear. So at this time next year, if Jacob invites me back, we will see where we are. So when we do technical, that's what we look at. We look at charts, we look at price, and we look at volume. And I think you can't make decisions without looking at these things in terms of trading, in terms of knowing what's going on in the market. I always think that's one of the most important things to look at the trend and to look at specifically at the price. Now the other thing you do when you look at a candle chart here, can you see here you've got a negative candle. What's the one next to it? Positive, yeah. Can you see it's inside the candle? So what does that mean? It means that you've traded within the same range. When you have something like that, it's called a harami pattern, and it means that the market might be pausing. There might be a pause. In this case, it was a pause and it was a reversal. So when you look at candles, try and find some kind of signal. Is it trading within the range, above the range, below? So this is an example of the harami pattern there. Okay, so this is to show you generally when we look at technical analysis. The big thing is Dow theory, which is started by Charles Dow, and he says the market has 3 phases. And these are the 3 phases that he speaks about. Accumulation, when you hear about the news, so you want to start buying it. Increase buying, where you're sure the market is there, so you come in. The last one is distribution. Now, distribution means you're going against the trend. So I always say, when you've got the Financial Times, and then you've got the companies and market section. Whenever I see a big story from the companies and markets on the front page of the Financial Times, I think, right, it's time to turn. Because that story should be on companies and markets. The fact that it's on the front page means that everyone knows about it now. Maybe it's time to do the opposite. So this is distribution, when so much has happened and everyone talks about it. If you get a cab, they talk about it. So it becomes like the end of the move. Yeah. So that's also when Bitcoin hit quite a high level. A few years back, everybody was talking about it. Then we had the big correction. So distribution is one of the phases from Dow theory. So this is, whenever I talk about the Dow theory, I look at the long-term, medium-term, and short-term trends. Okay, so dollar-yen, really interesting on dollar-yen. What's the long-term trend? What would you say? Long-term, what have we got?
Positive.
Exactly. It's upwards, it's bullish. You can see straight away, from 120, even 115. around there, and we hit 160. So long-term dollar strong against the yen. Okay, medium term, what have we got, do you think? Still upwards, yeah. Medium term, still upwards. Very short term, we'd have to look at the very short term hourly chart. So can you see the big move from 160 there, and then we had all the way down to 140. So that's when the dollar weakened against the yen. There was the announcement that the Bank of Japan was putting interest rates up, and there was this carry trade which caught a lot of people by surprise. And that, of course, that happens during the summer holiday when people are trying to have a break. Things like that always happen during times like Christmas time or summer holidays. So this, we had the big move over here. So overall, dollar yen, it looks like something like 160 at some stage could be retested, but the natural level is more around 140. It's more like the level where it's settling at. When the dollar is too strong and the yen is too weak, there is often intervention. The Bank of Japan would intervene and say we can't have such a weak yen, and there would be some kind of settling level. So here is to show you the trend and to show you how important, in this case, the resistance. Where would you say resistance is there?
160.
Exactly.
150.
Exactly. So 160 is the big one, and just above it, because it's also called a psychological level. So psychological level, big round numbers. So that's what we've got there, which is 160 there. So this is what we look at. We try and see, short term, if you want to trade, look at the hourly. Longer term, we look at these ones on the dollar yen. Okay, so this one is an interesting one. This is when I came in November 2023, and Bitcoin was sitting at 30,000. So long term, we had this market was trying to find a level, but it hadn't gone all the way. And then we had this one, which is now. What kind of candle is that? Exactly. So that's clearly the one where we've got the Trump trade, where we had this saying the US is open to cryptos and everything. So you had this sharp move there. So we see the difference from a market which was just trying to go, which was trying to find a base around here, and then we saw the one where we see the very sharp move there. So this is how we look at candles. We look at candles by trying to see, is it a positive candle, is it a negative candle? Okay, and then, as I said, the charts that we use would be the line, the first one that you know, the bar, the point and figure, and the last one is the candle chart. So if you had to choose between these four types of chart, which one do you think you'd find the most useful in terms of choosing to trade or anything? Which one would you say would be the one that would appeal to you the most?
Candle.
What would you say?
Candle.
The candle chart, yes. What would you say?
Candle.
The candle as well. Yes, over here. Yes.
Yeah, the candle as well.
Candle as well. Right at the end. Yes. Which chart would you use?
Both.
The line chart. The candle chart as well. Most people, Chiara, would you use?
Yeah,
Candle chart. Next to you, what's your name?
Bailey. Yeah,
Bailey.
candle
Chica.
chart.
So all of you, because visually it's easier to use, yeah. The line chart is popular because people say, oh, I don't want the headache and the noise, I just want a line. I just want to see the trend. So very, very simple, and they just want to see. People use the line chart mostly on closing prices. The bar one, of course we remember the bar one, open, high, low, and the close. And then we've got point and figure. So these were huge in the 1900s. Everyone used to look at point and figure. Every time the market went up, you had a cross. Every time it went down, you had a north. And I had to, my work first thing in the morning at 6:30 was to update the point and figure chart. So I'd come in and I'd have the big charts there, and with my pencil, I would update them to see what's happened in Asia, and then I would check and I would send that to clients. So point and figure chart, really, really popular. Why do people like them? Can you see very clearly? You can see when there's a support like that, and then you can see the resistance. So very popular because also you can see important levels. And I think when you do something yourself, like I had to update them, you learn a lot. Because it's something which is quite tedious, you actually tend to learn a lot more. So point and figure at the time, hugely popular. Today, I don't see many people using them. I think it's really, really being replaced by the candle charts, which is the one which I use quite a lot. So this is to show you just an example of a candle chart on the euro dollar. So this is the most recent one. Can you see where I put that line across? Yeah? So that line, what would it represent, do you think, that strong line across?
Support.
Exactly, support level. Once it's broken, what does it represent? It becomes the resistance, yeah? So it's the support, so just around, it looks like it's 106.80. Once it's broken, it becomes your resistance. So as long as the market stays below it, there is the feeling that there's more selling pressure, that you're just pushing lower there. In terms of trend, what would you say the trend is here? Long term, what would you say?
Mixed.
It's mixed, yeah. I mean, initially you'd think, okay, since September, clearly it's down. Yeah, so since September, it's down. And more recently, you've had quite a down move there. So euro looking quite vulnerable. And it's the same as the sterling dollar story, that the dollar's had this strong trade and it's got all these things behind, what they call the Trump trade, where people buying dollars just before November the 5th. So overall here, the big level, of course, is parity. And of course, there's a risk. There's a risk that euro dollar could hit parity. There could be a chance that before that, there could be a bounce. So the big level, of course, of parity. And on the upside, we've got 105, which is going to be your resistance if we can push that. So what we have is really the levels in terms of if you're a massive euro dollar bear, you're looking at how far can it go towards that level. It's not so far. You know, if you think it's 3 points away, about 3.5 points away, which is a bit of a worry, because that's a big psychological level. Okay, so if I look at this one, for example, which chart would that be? Which chart is that, if you look at it? I'll give you a clue. It's to do with what we spoke about earlier on. Sorry? So it's to do with the Magnificent Seven everything. So it's the one which measures, it actually measures all of the tech stocks that we spoke about earlier on. So it would be nearly. Yes, S&P, Chiara's got that. Well done, the S&P 500. So what I want to show you on that is that, can you see the long-term trend line on there since 2020? And then you move even sharper. So here we've got what we call accelerated line. So it's not just going up, it's going up at a sharper rate. Yeah. So this is something which sometimes is worrying because it's accelerating too fast. And sometimes you think, okay, I'm not going to be against the trend, I'm staying with that. So you're thinking, because it's so strong on the upside, I'm going to stay with that. So you would still have this kind of rally. So interesting to recognize it because, of course, it's driven by what we spoke about, NVIDIA and all the strong tech shares there. Okay, so just to finish off, because I want to also have a chance to have a chat about anything else. When we talk about the major themes for 2025, we speak about, for me, those 5 themes are the ones which come up a lot, which we're going to think about in terms of, you know, what are they going to tell us in terms of the future. So these are the 5 things of 2025, and is it okay, Jacob, if we have just a small discussion about them? Yeah? Okay, so I'm just going to ask you, just to have just a couple of points, just maybe 1 or 2 points together, if you can do that together, the 5 of you, yeah, on this. And I'm going to ask you on this one, on this China. Okay, so that's Clara. Yeah. Okay. That's Clara. You're doing the one about US China. Yeah. So just your views, so it's nice to chat about it. And you've got the one about, what's your one about? Oh yes, crypto, the one about crypto. Okay. Yeah, so that's really good. Okay, so I don't remind me of your name?
Florian.
Florian?
Rupert.
Okay, so let's do that. We're going to have a chat. Just a couple of points on that we have to get into chat. Okay, and you're going to tell me about.
Bottom Bitcoin portfolio. I'm getting to that.
That's a good one. We do that together. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah. Together.